very end of the semester, all right? But that's why net exports. Sometimes the net is a positive number, sometimes it's a negative number. And if you take those abbreviations and you apply them to the circular flow, households would get the C, okay? Household C. Government gets the class. What do you think? What did I just tell you? Government gets the G. What do firms get? Big I. And then out here is NX. NX. Okay? So those are the abbreviations. And if we're going to calculate GDP, we just need to count up all those sectors. All right? All of the market value of all the final goods and services that have been produced to send to the government, produced to sell to consumers, produced to sell to firms, and produced to sell to foreign countries. But we have to subtract our imports. Okay? That's how you calculate GDP. So the formula is C plus I plus G plus NX. And there it is. C plus I plus G plus NX. That's how you calculate it.
What is equal to W?
That's what I'm going to talk about now. This side is known as the Expenditures Approach to calculating GDP. The Expenditures Approach. In other words, we count all the different ways that people, sectors, are spending money. Right? Consumers are spending money, so we count up all the money that they spend. Companies are buying stuff too, resources, right? The resources market. Governments are buying stuff, other countries are buying stuff. This side is known as the Expenditures Approach to calculating it. But maybe you don't want to look at all the people spending money. You want to look at all the people that are getting that money, receiving the money, right? Because you don't just spend it and throw it on the floor. You give it to Paul. You give it to Tasha, right? So the other way of looking at it, the flip side of the coin, is this side of the equation, which is known as the income approach. Income approach.
What was that again?
NX is net exports. Net exports, which means exports minus imports. That's what that means. Exports minus imports. X minus M. So I'll put it right there for you. Okay? So you can count the expenditures approach using the expenditures approach. That's the most common. You can do the income approach, which isn't as common, but think of it as the flip side of a lot of this stuff. All right? W stands for wages. W is wages. P is profits. Profits. I is interest. Interest. And R is rents. Rents. Rent. These are all the general categories, ways of making money. Wages, which is the flip side of the C, right? How do these people get money to spend? Well, they get paid, right? Those are wages. Profits, kind of the flip side of the I, right? Companies making money rather than spending money. And then interest and rents. People make money on their investments in the way that people say it outside of this class, right? Hopefully you make a little bit of money on your savings account. Maybe you get paid dividends on stock purchases that you've made. There's different ways of earning interest. And we really refer to that as savings in this class, okay? And then rents. You're a guy that has rental property, people pay you, that's a form of income, okay? So, any questions about the two calculations? Because what's going to happen on a question, if I said, calculate GDP using the expenditures approach, is I'm going to have, a list of stuff. Okay, let's say that wages were this, and consumption was this, government was that, net exports was this, or I could say exports were this, and imports were that, and you'd have to calculate this, very simple, and then you say, all right, so this is what GDP was that year using this approach. Or I'd pick out of the list of figures all this stuff. Theoretically, the two sides should balance though, right? I mean, for every dollar that gets spent, that should be a dollar that somebody else makes in income. Okay? Now, in your book, go to your book, chapter 6. It's possible that I'll get more detailed than that if I ask you a question about it. So in chapter 6, they have a chart that shows C plus I plus G plus NX, but how there are components for each of those categories. And for me, it's on page 138. It says the expenditure approach to computing GDP. What page for you guys? It's right here. What is it? 140? It's this one on the left-hand side. I might not just make it easy and give you the C and the I and the G. I might give you durable goods, non-durable goods, and services. You have to add all those up, and that's a piece of consumption. Okay? Or what about company investment? Fixed investment, inventory investment. I might use those labels, which are components, pieces of the broader C, the broader I, and so forth. There's no components that I want you to study for this, all right? But these might splinter off. They do splinter off in reality, so I might not just give you the C. I might give you, non-durable goods. And that's going to have to be part of your calculation, so you need to memorize that from your book. Now, one last thing before the bell rings, and we've got 2 minutes. So if it rings on me before I'm done, make sure you take a look at this on your own, because now you have the link on Blackboard. On this PowerPoint, when you go almost to the end, it talks about what's included and what's not included when we add everything up. Like, what about the consumption of cocaine? Do we count that in consumption? Is that part of how we calculate stuff? No. What about, investment in a new tree house that you build for your kids in your backyard? No. What if you build a guest house in your backyard and then your mom stayed there for free? You wouldn't count that. But if you rented it, that could be included, right? Because that's a form of income for you. And if you get to the very end, it talks about what's counted and what's not counted, which is really a way to test how well you know this long definition of GDP. And that's what they used as one of the small freaks a couple of years ago. So what's not included? Things produced at home but not sold in any markets. So you produce vegetables, but you're not a farmer. You just have a garden at home. That's not counted. Including home improvement. Illegal transactions. Not counted. Drug use, prostitution. Unless, I guess it's legal. I think in Nevada it might be counted, but not in California. Sale of stocks and bonds, not included. That's not a good or a service, right? That's a savings vehicle if it goes up in value. Question?
In the textbook it says goods that are produced on a farm and consumed by the farmers is included.
Yes, if you're a farmer, right? But if you're not a farmer and you live in Los Angeles and you say, okay, I'm going to grow a vegetable garden in my backyard for us, then no, that's not counted. Sale of used goods. So this went back to an earlier question that Paul brought up today, right? You don't count sale of used goods, because that would be another form of double counting, right? Count a car every time it gets sold. That's not a good way of trying to measure our economic health. It doesn't value leisure time, doesn't count social well-being, obviously, and social costs like pollution. And so ultimately, these three measures, inflation, GDP, and employment and unemployment, are important, but they're not everything. There's actually a case that I'll bring up later on this semester about how the country of Bhutan said, we're not going to have GDP or GNP, we're going to have GHP, GNH, gross national happiness. That's what really matters. And they got serious about it, and I'll tell you about it later. All right. Have a good weekend. Thanks for your patience with all the technical stuff. All right. Thanks. So we got better today, huh?
Yeah.
like you had to spin it or zoom or anything very much?
I did, actually.
Okay.
But that was just to make it so it wasn't
You know,